think that President Putin would like to make a deal. I think that President Zelensky would like to make a deal.
Mr. President, what kind of concessions does Vladimir Putin need to make at this point?
Most importantly, during these talks between our president and the Americans, it was once again confirmed that without resolving the territorial issue according to the formula agreed upon in Anchorage, there is no hope of achieving a long-term settlement. We, as Vladimir Putin emphasized, are sincerely interested in resolving the Ukrainian crisis through political and diplomatic means. Until this is achieved, Russia will continue to consistently pursue the objectives set for the special military operation, specifically on the battlefield, where the Russian armed forces hold the strategic initiative.
Ukraine launched a fresh strike just hours before its first trilateral peace talks with the United States and Russia, sending a clear signal that it intends to keep pressure on Moscow even as diplomacy gets underway. A fire broke out at an oil depot in Russia's Penza city amid what local authorities described as a Ukrainian drone attack, adding to a growing wave of strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. Officials said the attack took place on the intervening night of January 22nd to 23rd, with Penza Governor Oleg Melnichenko linking the incident directly to incoming Ukrainian drones. According to the governor, debris from a downed drone fell onto the oil depot's facilities and triggered the blaze, which lit up the night sky and prompted an emergency response. The incident at the Russian oil depot was reported by Ukrainian outlet The Kyiv Independent on January 23rd, highlighting it as part of Kyiv's wider campaign against Russian logistics. No casualties were reported from the Penza fire, although authorities imposed temporary curbs on mobile data services during the attack, likely to limit real-time reporting and coordination. Penza lies roughly 545 kilometers from Ukraine's northeastern border with Russia, underscoring how far Ukrainian long-range drones can now strike into Russian territory. In a separate incident in the Voronezh region, the governor said a residential home caught fire after being hit by fragments from other downed drones, pointing to the risks of falling debris. Ukraine has repeatedly said it regards Russian energy facilities as legitimate military targets, arguing that oil and gas revenues help fund President Vladimir Putin's war machine. On January 21st, an oil terminal in Russia's Krasnodar Krai was also struck, sparking a major blaze at the Volna terminal and further disrupting fuel infrastructure. The regional governor reported that 3 people were killed and 8 others injured in that strike, making it one of the deadlier recent attacks on Russia's energy sector. All this comes as the first trilateral peace talks between Ukraine, Russia, and the United States are being held on January 23rd and 24th, in what is being billed as a tentative step toward ending the conflict. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the talks in Abu Dhabi after meeting U.S. President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos. Trump later told reporters that his meeting with Zelensky had been good, but stressed that efforts to end the war remained an ongoing process. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said on January 22nd that the negotiations were now down to resolving just one last major issue, suggesting that a framework deal could be within reach if all sides agree.
Without stations go with President Zelensky.
We had a conversation. I've had numerous conversations on Ukraine, but it'd be nice to end that for me. You know, it costs us nothing. We make money. I don't want to make money, but we make money. Whereas Biden spent $350 billion stupidly and lost a lot of money, but it's not about the money. It's about 25 to 30,000 soldiers, mostly soldiers. But you know, what's happened here is there were times when Putin didn't want to make a deal, times when Zelensky didn't want to make a deal, and it was like opposite times. Now I think they both want to make a deal, but we'll find out.
Does something change that makes you think that Putin and Zelensky now are serious about it?
Any predictions? There are no changes. I think that President Putin would like to make a deal. I think that President Zelensky would like to make a deal.
Mr. President, what kind of concessions does Vladimir Putin need to make at this point?
The talks lasted approximately 4 hours and were exceptionally substantive, constructive, and, I would say, extremely frank and trusting. The interlocutors, as is well known, had arrived from Davos, where, literally before their flight to Moscow, they had participated in a series of events with their president, Donald Trump, including those related to the Ukrainian settlement. They shared their first-hand impressions and fresh assessments of the US president's meeting in Davos with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, which both Witkoff and Kushner personally attended. They also assessed other contacts they had held in December and January at Mar-a-Lago in Florida and in several European capitals. Overall, I would say the Russian president's meeting with American representatives was specifically focused on gathering information on results of the Americans' contacts with Ukrainian and European partners and jointly defining the parameters for further action. And the next step in this direction was agreed upon. It was agreed that the first meeting of the Trilateral Working Group on Security Issues will take place in Abu Dhabi today, Friday, January 23rd. The Trilateral Working Group meaning representatives of Russia, the United States, and Ukraine. At the same time, the heads of the Bilateral Economic Group will also meet in Abu Dhabi. This is already a bilateral group, meaning Russia and the United States, Kirill Dmitriev and Steve Witkoff. Our security negotiating team has already been assembled and will depart for the Emirates in the coming hours. It includes representatives of the Ministry of Defense leadership, led by Admiral Kostikov, Chief of the Main Directorate of the General Staff. I'll also say that our delegation just received specific instructions from the Russian president, taking into account all the details of today's conversation with the Americans. The Americans, it must be acknowledged, have done a great deal to prepare this meeting, and they hope that it will be successful and open up prospects for progress on the entire range of issues related to ending the conflict and reaching a peace agreement. Overall, I repeat, the meeting that just concluded in the Kremlin was beneficial in every way for both our and the American sides. It was agreed at the meeting that the Russian and American sides will continue to maintain close contact with each other, both on Ukraine and other issues. Most importantly, during these talks between our president and the Americans, it was once again confirmed that without resolving the territorial issue according to the formula agreed upon in Anchorage, there is no hope of achieving a long-term settlement. We, as Vladimir Putin emphasized, are sincerely interested in resolving the Ukrainian crisis through political and diplomatic means. Until this is achieved, Russia will continue to consistently pursue the objectives set for the special military operation, specifically on the battlefield, where the Russian armed forces hold the strategic initiative at the meeting in the Kremlin. Donald Trump's initiative to establish a peace council was also discussed, as well as a number of regional issues and the situation surrounding Greenland. During the exchange of opinions on the peace council, our willingness to allocate $1 billion from Russian assets frozen by the previous U.S. administration to this body's budget was emphasized. The remaining funds from our frozen U.S. reserves could be used to rebuild territories damaged by the fighting after a peace treaty is concluded between Russia and Ukraine. Discussions on this topic will continue in the Bilateral Economic Group.
Будет продолжен в двусторонней экономической группе.